The Nationals have made a new move entering 2025, and I actually kind of like this one. It reminds me of a former Washington National just a few years ago.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, check us out over on Twitter. And of course, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course, the video version of this podcast you can check out over on YouTube. And before we get into it, yes, if you are watching over on YouTube, you see I have a new studio. We have moved into a new apartment here in the Arlington area, and you'll see it's pretty empty right now, but over the next week, you're going to see it is going to be a beautiful setup here, right here for you as we get into the 2025 Washington Nationals season. So stay tuned for that and check it out next Monday. That is when you'll see a much more improved Locked On Nationals studio. Later on in today's show, though, we will be getting into Jacob Young's new look, who heads into the spring training looking really good. We'll just say that and talk about that in the third segment of today's show. And the second segment, Nathaniel Lowe does not seem happy with the way that arbitration went with the Washington Nationals. He lost his case going up. He won at $11.1 million. The Nationals won at $10.3 million. The Nationals won that arb hearing. So Nathaniel Lowe does not seem very happy with how that went. We'll discuss that and the ramifications that the Nationals could face from that in the second segment of today's program. But we start off discussing a move the Nationals made over this weekend, signing former All-Star shortstop Paul DeJong to a one-year deal. Is this a good move? I think it is. But before we jump into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. As we get into today's show, let's address this. The Washington Nationals signed Paul DeJong to a one-year deal coming off a season of which he hit 24 home runs between the White Sox and the Royals, and he is likely to be your third baseman on opening day. I really like this move overall. For this late in the spring training, again, all we have talked about this offseason is what will the Nationals do to address power? Well, they made the trade for Nathaniel Lowe, who's going to be your first baseman every single day here. They have made the addition of Josh Bell, bringing him back to DC. That's going to add some power from both sides of the plate there. And then also, you now have Paul DeJong in the fold as well. This is a really interesting sign, in my opinion, because Mike Rizzo was just asked about this, and Davey Martinez, for a matter of fact, that they were both acknowledging that Brady House is going to be your future at third base. They still believe in Brady House, the former first-round pick. He's going to come up and make a difference, likely at some point this season. But for the right now, they need someone who is A, going to bring power, B, going to bring leadership, and C, someone to help defensively. Because the good thing about Paul DeJong is he is actually a pretty damn good defensive third baseman there. And he proved that this past season. When he was with the White Sox, the guy was just basically on fire at the plate. If you talk about some guys amongst that Chicago White Sox team who, in my opinion, was probably the worst major league team of all time, talking about what he brought to the plate and what he brought for the White Sox was a positive WAR player, which did not really come all too often looking at their 24-man roster. He had a 703 OPS between the Royals and the White Sox this last year, and also 24 home runs, 18 home runs in 102 games with the White Sox. Cooled off just a little bit. But here's also the thing about Paul DeJong, is that while, yes, he is a former big-time kind of prospect within the St. Louis Cardinals, he was an all-star back in 2019 with the Cardinals. He has played shortstop and has also played third base. This is going to be one of those weird signings where I think the Nationals will get the most out of it. And we were talking about this before we even started the show, but this reminds me of a former Washington National and the signing that they made kind of late in or early on in the spring training, and someone who made a big difference for this team. Who is that? It's Jesse Winker from this past season. This kind of gives me some Jesse Winker vibes. Someone who was a former All-Star kind of player. Someone who has come in and who has been a good major leaguer in the past. Has had a tough few seasons. Has kind of fallen off production-wise. But I think this gives Paul DeJong an opportunity to, number one, succeed, and number two, just play every single day. My big issue with this whole deal is Jose Tena, though. I really like Jose Tena. I thought the Nationals were going to roll with him to be their everyday third baseman. That does not seem like the case anymore. I don't think the Nationals are going to roll out Jose Tena and have Paul DeJong sit on the bench. I think the whole reason why they brought DeJong into the fold here was to do that Jesse Winker deal. You bring him in, have him compete for a spot, eventually be an everyday player if he does succeed, and then you trade him at the deadline. I think that is exactly what the Washington Nationals will do. And I think that's a good plan. But when you have someone who is young like Jose Tena, who has shown that he can really hit from and not be great defensively over at third, but overall be a solid prospect, I think that's the one downside of signing Paul DeJong. And kind of getting into it, like I think I might be higher on Jose Tena. Like if you were to truly ask me this question, which we're going to get into at some point this spring training, could Jose Tena be an everyday player for the next 10 years? I would say yes. I really like what Tena brings to the plate here. Not just offensively, but I think defensively, he's got some talent as well. And you did see him improve a little bit over at that hot corner. And also, not even to mention, I think he could be an outfielder someday. So he is kind of getting put to the side at this point, which is slightly frustrating for a lot of different reasons. But when you kind of look at it from this perspective, this is a good deal overall for Paul DeJong. Like, this is someone who will be a middle-of-your-order bat, who can hit the long ball, and who also is going to provide some leadership in a clubhouse filled with a bunch of youth. Like, the Nationals, they are going to have a leader of some sort. Paul DeJong could be that Jesse Winker spark plug that we saw this past season. Now, is he going to be as good as Jesse Winker is? Who knows at this point? I would imagine at this point in time that the Nationals have a solid plan for Paul DeJong and what they expect him to bring in 2025. I think they do expect him to play third base every single day. I think they do expect him to hopefully hit 20 home runs by this year's trade deadline. And if the Nationals aren't in contention, which is a real possibility, you trade him at the deadline. Hopefully get something in return. But also, let's acknowledge the downside. This could fall flat on their face. And if it is, or if it does rather, then you have Jose Tena to hopefully come in and take that spot and run with it. But where the Nationals stand today, this is an overall good move. Like, I only see positives with this. It's a 1-year, $1 million contract. If you have to move on from him and he doesn't even make the team, so be it. Whatever at this point. But I do expect him to make this team. I do expect him to be in the middle of this lineup every single day. I do expect him to have some sort of an impact in this national season here in 2025. I think this makes a lot of sense for a team that is, number one, still in that rebuild mode, and number two, a team that is still looking for a leader to kind of take the reins of some guys that we just simply have not seen just take full accountability yet. Talking about Jose Tena and talking about Brady House not being ready for the majors at this point in time. But this is going to provide a lot of flexibility for the Nationals. I'm excited to see how Paul DeJong plays here in 2025. And again, I'm willing to bet that this guy will be kind of that Jesse Winker of 2025 here. He could surprise you, and he might turn your head in the right direction. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. Next, let's talk about something not so positive. We've complained all offseason about the Nationals not necessarily spending and being at the top of their budget and not handing out some big contracts when we all expected them to at least do one maybe superstar or a good couple-year deal. The Nationals did not make that acquisition whatsoever. They did trade for Nathaniel Lowe, and Nathaniel Lowe already seems unhappy with the organization. I'll explain that, and I'll explain the possible ramifications of this. But before we do that, let me tell you guys about our friends over at SelectQuote. And of course, in sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. And the same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. And if you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million. There's no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Later on, let's get into Jacob Young and his new look entering into 2025. And Nationals fans, you might like it or you might not. We'll discuss that later on in the show. But Nathaniel Lowe, the Nationals' big acquisition from this offseason, the 2023 World Series champ, the Texas Rangers, already appears to be unhappy with how the Nationals handled the arbitration process. We'll explain the arbitration process real quick in a summary form after we kind of get into this, but he was asked about the arbitration process and how it went. Well, for those who don't know, the Nationals, they won the arbitration hearing. They thought that Nathaniel Lowe was worth $10.3 million for this season, and Nathaniel Lowe obviously thought he was worth $11.1 million for this season. For those who don't understand the arbitration process, let's put it in these words real quick. It's basically as if the Nationals fight as if they think Nathaniel Lowe is worth a little bit less than what Nathaniel Lowe thinks of himself. This is typical like business stuff here, except it goes into court. And when it goes into court in front of an arbiter, then this is where it gets a little sticky, because from a player's perspective, a team that is fighting to save, in this case, $800,000, you're basically giving all the reasons why this player is not worth $11.1 million and it is worth $10.3 million. You kind of have to break them down to build them up. And that's what is going on in this case. And of course, Nathaniel Lowe, he has to bring out all the positives in his game, and they have to kind of make the case as to why he's worth what he thinks he is worth. Well, the Nationals, they won the case. They got the $10.3 million AAV. Nathaniel Lowe did not get his $11.1 AAV for this season. And it does not seem to be all too sitting well with Nathaniel Lowe, because he was asked about the arbitration process by Andrew Golden of the Washington Post, and he kind of chuckled and took a little time and said, next. Again, this is your big offseason acquisition. This was the guy that you said, don't worry, guys, we're not going to go get Pete Alonso. We're not going to go get Alex Bregman. And no, we're not going to go get Corbin Burns. We've got Nathaniel Lowe. You have one of the lowest payrolls in all of baseball for a team that used to consistently be in the top 10 as far as Major League payroll goes. And you're fighting tooth and nail for $800,000. To put this into perspective, you just got a new car. Let's say you just bought a new Jeep or whatever out there. Name your car. And they're like, well, you actually have to pay like $300 more for this car. You're spending like $20,000 on it, let's say. Does that really matter all too much? Are you really going to go to the end and be like, no, I got to save the $300. I have to. Maybe you are. Maybe you are smart like that, and maybe you can make a case for it. But that is still bad business. That is what we were trying to get to with this arbitration process, in which, by the way, the Nationals have not been like this in years past. This goes to show you, as we sit here today, the mindset of the Lerner ownership group sitting here today. This is a completely different mindset that we have seen from years past from this ownership group. If you are reading blogs out there who say, well, good for the Nats. Sure, they won the arbitration process, but that is so wrong. So wrong. No one has won in this case. If you had any hope for Nathaniel Lowe wanting to be here long term, then you will know that this is a bad look. This is an awful look for the Nationals, and that's it. He is the highest paid player on this team annually as far as active players go. And to have your guy go fight in an arbitration process to think that he is worth $800,000 more, which, by the way, is pennies for this billionaire ownership group, then it is simply not good. The way that this has always gone for Nathaniel Lowe, I knew that this was going to be a disaster. Players have talked about this process in years past. Because let's be honest, this is just old, stupid stuff if we're just being honest. An arbitration process should not be happening in the year of 2025. In fact, I feel as if this is going to go out the door in the next CBA. I do believe the players union wants this so they can, keep control of their own players and try to get the most money possible for these 3 years of arbitration. But overall, it's simply just wrong. Like, it just is. Especially when you have an ownership group that is like, we think you're worth $800,000 less. Like, yes, on the front of it, you and I, they're probably just typical humans making whatever amount of money. $800,000 is a big deal. But when you are a millionaire player, when you are a billionaire owner, $800,000 is really not that much. And if you are up there with the Dodgers as far as payroll goes, and you're like, listen, we need some money, we need some cash. Okay, well, what are you going to do with that $800,000? Yes, I guess in hindsight, it did just land you Paul DeJong, who got $200,000 more than $800,000. But that's not going to hurt them that much. I can promise you that. If the Nationals were checking in on Alex Bregman earlier this offseason, the money that they have spent would have, the $800,000 meant nothing to them then. This whole thing just screams cheap, if we're being honest. And again, this is not the Nationals team that I grew up watching. This is not the Nationals team that you have grown up watching. They used to be consistently in the top 10 as far as payroll goes. And to their credit, they have not taken players to arbitration hearings all too often. They have typically settled with the player, but not this time around. You're one guy that you should try to make happy, that you should try to extend. You have now taken him through this arbitration process, and I can guarantee you this, if you think that he is going to take a discount of any kind on an extension talk, throw that out the window. That is not going to happen. And we don't know this to be a fact, but he may just say, I'm good on trying to get an extension here in DC. This whole arbitration process was a joke. And it's not just the Nationals. A lot of teams do this. Every team has done this in years past. But I think this goes to show you where this ownership group is at now. This has not happened to this extent in years past with the Nationals. They have gone to arbitration hearings before, but most of the time they have settled. And now you have your big offseason acquisition who appears to be unhappy with this. Because when he was asked about it, he says, he kind of laughed and goes, next. He did not want to talk about it publicly. And as he shouldn't, by the way. It was a joke. And the Nationals and the way that they have handled this, in my opinion, probably the bigger joke. And this whole thing is just bad optics by this organization. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Next, let's get into Jacob Young and his new look entering 2025. And if you haven't seen it, I'll tell you more about it after we tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm picking my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch theory, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And just so you know, if you haven't heard, I have a new studio set up here. You should check it out over on YouTube. Look up Locked On Nationals, hit that subscriber button, and check out the background. Maybe you have a suggestion of what you would like to see. We've got a lot of white walls here. Let me know what you would like to see. I've got some bobbleheads and a lot of different things that I think people will be thrilled about moving forward. Maybe a Patrick Corbin signed jersey will make an appearance. Who knows at this point in time? Well, in a week from now, you check back up on it. You'll see a brand new background here for Locked On Nationals. But let's get back into it with Jacob Young having a new look entering this season. And I wish I could get the picture up there for video listeners, but let me just describe it with one word. The dude looks jacked. The Nationals posted a picture of Jacob Young, the small center fielder who was a Gold Glove finalist. They posted a picture of him the other day taking batting practice, and they even acknowledged this guy looks jacked. Completely jacked. The speedster out and covering ground out in center field, the Gold Glove finalist. He looks as if he is ready to hit like 25 home runs, which, by the way, won't be the case. But in all seriousness, though, Jacob Young looks like a completely new ball player at this point in time. And this could be a huge, huge plus for the Nationals moving forward. Now, is this going to come with more home runs? Because right now, the projections over on Baseball Reference, they have him hitting 6 home runs, having like a 682 OPS. Last year, his slug was at a 331. He only hit 3 home runs, which is 3 more home runs than I thought that he could hit, if I'm just being honest here. But we have talked about it a lot this offseason. If Jacob Young could just get up to like a average OPS, like let's say he has like a 710 OPS, this is your everyday center fielder moving forward. He is that good defensively. And if he can continue to steal bases and be a 40 stolen base threat, there is no doubt in my mind that Jacob Young will be your everyday center fielder. And you will love that because, again, covering the ground that he does, getting on base, being a menace on the base paths as well. This is going to be a huge plus for the Washington Nationals and a huge plus for this team as far as winning games in 2025. I'm going to be interested to see how this new look Jacob Young kind of translate onto the field, because what makes Jacob Young special is his stolen base ability, the defense, obviously, standing out as one of the best center fielders in all of baseball defensively. But if he can also now do it offensively, and let's say he hits 10 plus home runs this season because of this new look and putting on some weight, this is going to be a huge plus for the Nationals in the year of 2025. So I thought that was really cool to see him put on some good muscle this offseason and he might be primed for a breakout season in 2025. But thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.